So it's starting now. Hi, it's John here again with another Indie Entrepreneur hangout and stuff. And this time we've got Ale Gonzalez Gomez. Am I pronouncing the name correctly, Ale?
Yeah, yeah. Ale is fine.
Okay, thank you.
Ale, yeah.
And yeah, basically we're going to talk about his entrepreneur's journey and the path he's taken and stuff. But before we get started, maybe you can share a little bit about yourself and who you are and what you're about.
Yeah, well, I'm from East Los Angeles, California, the area of East Los Angeles, right on the borderline of East LA and Boyle Heights.
Represent.
Yeah. I am a singer-songwriter, performer, lyricist, audio engineer, producer. I do quite a few things, so yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely something that we see a lot with creative entrepreneurs is that, you just do a little of everything until you start, basically building around you the team that supports you and can kind of help you in developing the other roles and stuff like that. So what got you started on the musical route? I remember like a story that I read about that like when you were a child and stuff like that. Maybe you could talk a little bit about some of the things that kind of was the roots of, your creative pursuit.
Yeah, well, I think I failed to mention my artist name, which is Ale. Um, and basically, I started off really young. Um, I started off with a drum set, and that didn't really uh, work out too well. I mean, my passion was for drums when I was a very young kid. And then, I did that for a bit, and then I moved on from that to a keyboard and used that for a bit. And then, I wasn't really fulfilled until the age of 12 when I got my first electric guitar.
Hmm.
And that was very fulfilling. It was like I can strum on it and kind of be aggressive with it like a drum set, but it
Hmm.
would give me the tones of a keyboard. And then so I started experimenting with different instruments like that, but guitar was my main instrument. um, Aside from that, I was a young kid, and I would spend hours in my room locked away for like maybe 3 4 hours a day just playing
Hmm.
guitar, continuously. This was back in the 80s. I'm sorry, no, this was back in the 90s. But
Hmm.
growing up, I grew up in where, well, the area where I'm from, which is Boyle Heights, East LA area. It was very consumed by hip hop culture. There was a lot of
Hmm.
at the time. It was in the 80s, when before I started playing guitar, um, where I grew up listening to nothing but like hip hop and Spanish music.
Hmm.
So um, and it was during the I was raised by a single mother, and it was very, it was quite the challenge for her to raise me, to raise
So
a, yeah.
along with like just basically the music that was around you and stuff, what would you say like were some of the things that really, influenced you and continued on your journey and stuff? Like was there somebody that like really, inspired you to kind of pursue music? What was it that like kind of really, like kind of was that kind of gave you that little bit of nudge?
You know, I have quite a few stories. There's been different incidents in my life, and some a little bit on the darker side, some a little bit more
Mm.
inspiring. It's been very versatile, diverse,
So,
these
so, so,
stories.
so when you say dark, take us there. Like, what does that mean? Like, what was it that kind of happened? If you don't mind just sharing that.
Well, when I was a kid, I was actually around 2 years old. I remember I have a story about Richard Ramirez, the
Mm.
Night Stalker. He almost broke into my house once, and I have that in my bio because it's actually a true story. Um, again, I was 2 years old. My mother, because there's been a lot of people who've asked me about this story, and just to clear it up, I was only two. You know what I mean? I was only 2 years old in a
Mm.
bed in my my bedroom at home at my mother's house. And back in the '80s, when he was on the run, um, you know, he tried breaking into our house, and I was only 2 years old. You know what I mean? But my mother heard the
Yeah.
whole thing. My mother saw the whole thing. She heard the whole thing. So later, when I got older, she told me about that story, and I thought that was actually, I thought that was almost like, wow, it's like it's very kind of a profound story. It's like escaping, death in a sense. It's just crazy.
Right.
It's just insane to me. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. It's a lot of things. It seems like sometimes that it you don't even know like kind of how different things that could have happened and stuff. I mean, like you said, you were 2 years old, so like if anything, it was like a narrow miss that like you could barely even know about and stuff, except for the stories and everything. But what would you say though were some things that kind of happened that you were as you were older that you were aware of that like you actually can remember and that really kind of touched your life in a more positive way of like continue on to like kind of
Yeah,
lead you to
yeah.
music.
I would say around the age of 12, as I grew up and was consumed by hip hop music and Spanish music from my upbringing because I'm Mexican. I'm Mexican Italian, primarily Mexican, but my ancestors are Italian. Um, Aside from that type of music and hip hop and all that, around the age of 12, I discovered the Seattle grunge movement, and that
Mm.
that completely transformed my life forever. Changed my life forever. I discovered Nirvana and Kurt Cobain, and then I discovered Soundgarden. You know, just a bunch of bands from Seattle that really,
Mm.
really had just had an impact on me, and very,
Well,
very guitar oriented, heavy rock music.
yeah, and certainly, even though it was a source of inspiration, I mean, we all know, like kind of the tragedy that happened with Kurt Cobain and stuff. How did that affect you to just basically somebody you really admired and to like have that loss and stuff?
Well, things like that happen, but you would never expect for it to happen to like your hero. You know what I mean? Like, or someone that you
Yeah,
grew up
absolutely.
admiring, as someone that you grew up admiring as an artist. A true artist. You know,
Yeah.
and then you also have to, as you get older, you almost have to kind of deal with the fact and cope with the fact that like your biggest influence in music and art in general is
Mm,
a drug addict. You know,
mm,
so
right.
you know, so things like that, make things, they humanize these people that you look up to as a kid. So
Yeah.
they humanize these people, and then you realize later when you get older, a little bit older, when you grow up,
Mm,
that these people that you're influenced by are just human, just like you and I. And
yeah, definitely. Somebody who has been my idol, if you will, that I really admire, recently passed away. Actually, a couple. One was, of course, Dr. Wayne Dyer. He was
right,
like somebody who really taught a lot of the philosophies that I take on with my life. And another one's
very
very
influential.
young. He's yeah, very influential. And another one was Scott Dinsmore, who his thing was about like to his movement was called Live Your Legend, and basically he inspired us to, take what it is you're passionate about and to make a difference with it and stuff. Not simply just kind of think about one day I'll do it and stuff. And he just recently passed away very young. Like I think he's like in his early 30s, and so it's like you said, it's kind of like being hit with like these two deaths and stuff, and realizing that like they're human too, and like and really like what it brings back home to me is the idea that we have this limited time as human beings to make as much difference as we can and stuff. So what do you see as like the things you really feel like you want to get done in the time that you have with your music, with your art and developing as an artist?
Along the way, the thing is in my 20s, I really did not, I really didn't use my music or my talent for anything in particular. I was just writing what I would consider good music, but at the same time I was battling with addiction myself. I was a major alcoholic, and it was really out of control at certain points. And now that I've recovered and that I've been sober for about like 4 years, going on 5 years, and
Wow. Congratulations.
Thanks. To me, I look at the world and I see a lot of people with a lot of emotional problems, and I think that emotional issues are the root to a lot of major problems in the world. I feel that people don't really take time, or they don't have the time to stop and try to heal themselves, from whatever wounds or whatever trauma or whatever pain they've experienced in the past or are experiencing now in the present. So, I'm using my music now that I'm a bit more, I would say, wiser, as opposed to how I was in my 20s, which was really just out of control. But I feel that I feel that I have a responsibility, because I have a voice, and I can sing, and I can write music, and I can produce my own music. If I have all these talents and I got all the tools, then I might as well use my music for something really good, and that's to help people cope with life and heal, and try to make the best out of it. Try to make people feel like there's someone that does understand, or that there's someone that could relate to what they are going through or have been through.
So what was there a defining moment, or what was it that like kind of helped you to finally realize that you had to make a change? Like in other words, you had this addiction and stuff, and you had these kind of times that like really you were struggling. So what kind of like, maybe can you take us to like a moment that really like you just said enough is enough, and you decided that it was time to make a change?
Yeah, in 2012, I was finishing my first year of sobriety, and I just had this I can't describe what I went through, but I kind of had like this mental breakdown, and it was really bad, and it was very intense, and it was my first year of sobriety, and I guess my body wasn't used to it, so I just kind of broke down, and my life changed after that, because it lasted for a while. My life changed after that, and that's when I truly started believing in a higher power. Because you hear that in AA a lot, and you hear that throughout the world and all these things. You hear about God, and I was always agnostic. I was always on the fence. But after that year in 2012, and after that incident and that episode, I said, what? Okay, so this is it right here. It's either I do something with my talent to better the world, or I don't even write, or I shouldn't even be writing. You know what I mean? I just have this mentality now where I either do something that's going to benefit the world, and for the better, or what's kind of like the point. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So now that you've realized that was your path and stuff, like what's been something that you've been really proud of that you've been able to achieve, up to this point now?
Surviving. just surviving, just living, just being alive at this point.
Yeah, yeah,
Just the fact that I'm still here and that I'm here talking to you and that I'm able to write a new album and that the fact that I just wrote an album and released it about almost a year ago, and the fact that I get to talk to my mother every morning and
mm,
and give her a hug. You know what I mean? Like, you
yeah,
know, you know, things like this really make me feel good in life. You know,
mm,
I am somewhat of a perfectionist when it comes to music and when it comes to the way things get done and things like that.
mm,
And it bothers me when, it definitely bothers me when things don't get done, in a specific way, or when my vision is not solidified. When I don't see things the way I envisioned them. It does kind of throw me back, and I do get upset. I'm not gonna lie about that. I do get upset. But you know what? Those are the time. Usually you just gotta keep moving. Just gotta keep walking. Just be like, you know what?
right.
Eh, at least I'm still breathing at this point. You know?
Definitely.
Yeah.
In terms of just basically this kind of dedication to just um, perfection, to doing things the best you can and stuff like that. Like, what are the things that kind of inspire you though? Like, what are the things that kind of that keep you going? Because certainly sometimes we kind of just feel like we push up against something, like, and we kind of like feel like like this I don't know, our limits, if you will, or like kind of
Right.
like yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, when it comes down to things like that, I love challenging myself. I
Mm,
really like to see how far I can take something. I do it in every possible way. I just love pushing myself. Sometimes to the point of exhaustion where I'm just completely exhausted, which is, it's quite unhealthy, but you got to do what you got to do, and I just want to see how far I can go, how far I can take things. And
yeah, I think that's definitely part of the creative process, because if you just stick with where you've been and your comfort zones and the things you're already good at and stuff, that's performing, or that's just doing what you know. But to me, part of creation, part of the creative process is pushing past that, pushing into these unknown territories and stuff that you don't know and everything. So what would you say, like, are some moments that kind of like that happen, like kind of these light bulb moments, or that, like, something that kind of was like, wow, I like didn't expect that with your music, or like something that like you explored and like really like you felt that flow, or that like kind of when you really felt like you were being creative.
um, you know, usually, because I'm more creative at night, during the nighttime. Um, I noticed one thing about uh, being creative at night. There's almost kind of like this, not to sound cliche or anything, but there's almost like this magic to creating at night, during the nighttime, and as opposed to like early in the morning. So I definitely create. I'm more creative at night, and as and to answer your question about that is, I guess experience has just allowed me to connect the dots creatively, where I'm just like, I just feed off of one thing and I'm like, okay, I love this idea. Now we're going to bounce to this idea. And almost like, if you just have enough experience, crafting songs and just writing music, you'll just continue to just bounce off of one idea to the other, so, um, you go from one idea to the other, and then you get like this emotional trigger. Like I was saying earlier, I think people are just very emotional beings, so, you know,
Was there like a moment in your recent album where like you just like kind of found this kind of moment that like you said, that things kind of really flowed and like you really went into this another layer of creativity?
Yeah. You know what? Being alone, being alone really does quite a few things to you. I mean, it almost forces you to sit there with yourself and acknowledge what's happened in your life and what's going on in your life.
Mm.
And then you just look back, almost reflecting. Reflection is very important, I think. Reflection is what triggers that, in my opinion. Just reflecting, like, wow, I can't believe I just went through all that. You know,
Mm.
or wow, I can't believe, you look back and you look back at like point A, point B, point C, and then it all accumulates while you're looking back, and you end up thinking to yourself, wow, what a ride, you know. So it's like a roller coaster ride almost, and and you have so many, you end up having so many ideas where you have to write it all down. Honestly, I would suggest to anyone who's creative and who's up in the air, because I know so many creative people and they're just up in the air all the time.
Mm.
They have all these ideas and they're I've met quite a few people that I consider geniuses, and but they don't write anything down.
Right.
They don't write anything down. They don't put it on a document. They don't put it on a sheet of paper. You have to write these things down, and you have to look at it right in front of you, like, and to the point where you're like, wow, that's unbelievable, and then you start adding elements, you start adding structure, and then you end up, at least for me, I end up writing an album that way,
Definitely.
reflection first, then you structure everything after on paper or a document, whichever, and then you just from there, it almost seems like you just get lost in this world of creativity, like it all adds up. So all of a sudden you see this new world right in front of your face, and you're like, wow, that's amazing.
Mm.
And that's how my albums come about, at least in my experience as a writer.
And I think there's like two different minds. Like when you're in the creative moment and stuff, that's one type of mind. And when you're like, doing the structure and the editing, it's like another mind. And you almost can't like, it's if anything, you don't want to like try to do both because they'll interfere with each other. When you're creative, if you try to edit, it'll get in the way of the creative process. Because I found when I'm writing
Yeah,
that like different times, the ideas are just coming from somewhere and I don't know where and stuff. But it's like if I try to start editing and like kind of correcting myself, it'll interrupt it and it'll kind of like cut it off and stuff.
I agree, because it's almost like you're being two different people.
Yeah.
You're being the artist, and then you're also forcing yourself to be the engineer.
Mm.
And those are two totally different worlds. But you see, the trick is it's how they say you have to make sure that you have to strengthen up your left arm. If you're
Mm.
right-handed, you got to make sure you strengthen up that left arm.
Right.
So that's just how it is. And that's what I ended up doing throughout the years. Is I considered myself to be a decent songwriter, and but I was a terrible engineer. So I said, you know what? It's time to really savvy up on these engineering skills and get more technical. And especially if I'm going to save money, if I'm going to save money and not hire an engineer, and I'm just going to do it myself,
Mm.
So I studied for hours and hours, and then I was lucky enough to meet someone in my studio complex by the name of Mike Warfield,
Mm.
who was in his 60s, and he was an engineering genius. And he started off in aerospace
Mm.
engineering, and then moved on to recording engineering. So I told him,
Wow.
I said one day to him, I said, listen, I'll buy you a few beers if you just show me the ins and outs of recording engineering. And he said, yeah. So he saved me basically 2 semesters worth of schooling.
Nice.
You know, and I saved a ton of money right there and then. And I just took notes. I would just buy him a 6-pack of beer, and I'd end up writing notes whenever he would just give a speech. He would just go on and give speeches about recording engineering. And he was just so poetic about it, and it was like, this guy's a total genius, you know. And so he taught me the ins and outs, and then from there I took it on my own, you know. And you know, but yeah. So you have to, especially if you're independent, completely indie, you know, you have to learn the ropes. You have to learn how to do these things on your own, because no one's going to do it for you unless you have the money to do it, and unless you have the money to pay someone, then by all means go ahead. You know,
and that's the thing too with indie entrepreneurs, is that they're more willing to just basically take whatever steps it takes to that next level, to that next thing and stuff, rather than waiting. Like, so many people like have this idea of, oh, I want to write music, or oh, I want to make a movie and stuff, and
Right.
they talk about it, but they never take an action. And what you just did there, or what you shared, is just what I find over and over again with folks who are creative entrepreneurs, is they will do whatever it takes to get it done. They find a problem, and rather than like run away from it, they tackle it. They go dive right in and stuff. So that's one of the things that like I absolutely see over and over again.
Yeah.
What would you say though is like the next level that like you see that you want to take in terms of for your art, or for your, you know, yourself as an artist?
You know, look, here's the thing. Honestly, you know, I suggest that people, I just have a quick suggestion. Everyone talks about grinding, and everyone talks about I'll sleep when I'm dead, and everyone talks about, you know, no rest, and you know, I'm gonna do this all on my own, and I'm not gonna, you know. Everyone just talks about all this, you know, hard work, and you know, that's great, you know, that's wonderful. But by all means, get some sleep. Trust me on this one. You know, because you can't be you can't be 100% when you're like running on 2 or 3 hours of sleep. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I know this from experience, and trust me, you know, the older you get, the more it's going to catch up to you. And I'm only 33, you know, so trust me, you will be much more effective with everything you do in your career if you are running on 8 to at least 10 hours of sleep. 8 to 10 hours of sleep a day, you will be 110% with everything that you do, you know. But
Definitely.
anyway, aside from that, to answer your question, I'm sorry, you were asking me what.
Yeah. So for yourself as an artist, as you know, like in terms of your art, what does that next level look like for you?
Okay, I'm working on this album. My next album is going to be titled Dimensions, and every song is based on different dimensions of the self. You know, my current album is titled Irregular Heartbeat. This next one's going to be titled Dimensions, and I just want to get across how every single human being has basically a universe within them. You know, it's very, you know, thing is that a lot of people don't, you know, there's not really a lot of people who understand the fact that there's so many dimensions within one human being, just one person, you know. And you know, I can go from a song titled Ghost Reactions to another song on my new album titled White Rose, you know, and they're both totally different things, you know. So I like diversity, I like variety. I don't like when bands sound exactly the same throughout the whole entire album.
Right.
You know, so I don't do that with my music, and I don't do that with my band. You know, I like when each song has its own identity. So I just want to make sure that whatever I write, I'm able to help people, like I was saying earlier, help themselves. You know, again, you know, being someone who recovered from addiction and alcoholism, I think it's very important to help people heal themselves, help themselves, and so, and B, I want to make sure that I get the highest form of pure art that I can possibly, deliver. I think that real magnetic art is very underrated. We're living in the United States, and this country is just driven by commercial art, where everything's super commercial, everything is very watered down, and it really, I can't, I can't deal with it, it just kind of like, it like burns this hole in my soul, you know what I mean? It's just, I'm really into like, very pure, forms of art, very strong, very, very, substance, a lot of substance, so I need that. I need that in my life. I need to be able to deliver that, so again, I just want to deliver something that's very passionate, very passionate.
Awesome.
Yeah. And I swore back in 2012 or 2013, I made a promise to myself that 75% of the lyrics that I write were going to be to help people heal themselves. And the other 25% were going to be love songs, because I'm a total sucker for a love song. So yeah.
Awesome. Hey, Ale, this has been great. What are the ways that folks can find your music and to learn more about you? What's like the best way to do that?
You can visit my website, which is the letter O twice. It's OODreamtime at Gmail. I'm sorry, OODreamtime.com. That's my website. And
Awesome.
yeah, and you can also find me on Instagram under OODreamtime.
Oh, great. Well, great. Thanks again for this opportunity to learn about your story and to basically share it with our audience and stuff. We'll definitely look forward to kind of hearing more about where you go on your journey and stuff like that. So thanks. As we see at Mission Impersonal stopped by, and Robert stopped by, and Brad subscribed. So thanks for you all for watching, and we'll look forward to sharing more entrepreneurs' journeys that are